just because you only live once. And this wasn't quite really a YOLO moment, but we did enjoy a Cubs game. First for our 3 boys. In case they never get to go back to Wrigley Field, we want to make sure we've instilled something good in them. So they had their Wrigley Field experience. We are building Cubs fans as best we can because the choices and decisions we make in life matter, right? So that is my introduction to week 2 of our YOLO series. You only live once. Choose wisely. Choose wisely. We talked last week about this idea that life is made up of a series of decisions, hundreds and thousands of decisions that we make. Some choices and decisions are really big, life-changing decisions. And hopefully we don't encounter a ton of those in life, but there usually are a few, like a college or career choice, or a marriage choice, a choice to start a family, potentially a big move that might take us out of state or across country. All kinds of things that we encounter that can have a life-altering effect that really changes the direction and shape of how we live. Then there's kind of a second category of decisions that we talked about last week. These are all the kind of daily, weekly, conscious decisions that we make that may not be life-altering. It's not that kind of decision, but it definitely shapes our day, the direction of our immediate future, the coming week. These are decisions we make at work and with our spouse about how to live our life and how to spend our time and our money, etc. So that's really the bulk of the things that we're conscious of, at least. And then underneath that, there's this lower hidden level. We talked about the adaptive unconscious, this decision-making center we have in our brain that manages 95% of the decisions that we make. These are things that have just become automated and sort of just hum along in the background. All the things, little daily life tasks that we do every day, like driving the car, using our phone, all kinds of things, tasks we do at work. So decisions, all of the sum total of all of these things drives our life. It sets the direction in many ways for our days, for the entirety of our life. Last week, we sort of laid the framework for this message, or for this series, which comes out of the book of Proverbs. It's a series about wisdom, something we all seek and desire because we want to live well. We want to make good choices. And we'll get into a little more review in a second of what we talked about last week. But each week of the series now, from here on out, beginning today, we're going to look at one specific area in which we often find ourselves needing or seeking wisdom. And today it's this: the wise love rightly. The wise love rightly. We're talking about love. Now, not relationships. We just finished a series called The Love Covenant that dealt with love and relationships. But when we say love, the wise love rightly, what we mean is that our heart has certain desires, appetites. We'll think of them as loves, things that draw our heart, the loves of our heart that drive our decision making. And so today we're going to talk about this idea that the wise love rightly. A couple of years ago, my wife and kids and I had the opportunity to take a vacation with my parents, who had recently purchased a motorhome. So we packed all of us up into this motorhome to go on a camping and sightseeing adventure with my parents. It was a lot of fun. We had a great time. It just so happened that about a day or two, I think, before we were leaving on that trip, I had downloaded a brand new, I didn't bring my phone up with me, a brand new game on my phone. And it was so addictive and fun and all kinds of things. And on this trip, as we set out, we had not been gone more than a day when I started to get comments from people. Man, you've been on your phone a long time, or what is it that you're doing? You've had your nose in that thing all day. Matt, are you even looking, do you see what's going on? And I didn't really pay too much attention to them because I was playing my game that was really fun. And you know how these things are, right? You have to achieve different levels, and so you have to keep playing because you're always motivated to get to the next level, and there are incentives to get to the next level, so you have to keep playing. And before I knew it, I had spent a majority of this vacation playing this stupid game on my phone that I ended up deleting a month later because I got totally bored with it. And so most of our vacation pictures look like this. This happens to be Cincinnati. We're visiting some family we have there. Everyone else is looking out over the beautiful view. We just walked across the bridge, and now we're over on the Kentucky side looking back, and there I am. No doubt, I think it was something about airplanes. That's how cool I am. No doubt flying my little airplanes to some new city that I had discovered in this game. I missed out so much because I had my nose in my stupid phone playing a dumb game. But you can probably identify, if not with this in particular, with other ways that we get absorbed with something and don't even realize it, like a new show on Netflix. We even have a term in our culture, the binge watch, right? We've even named it, and before you know it, you've spent 4 or 5 hours because you keep clicking next, play next episode, and you realize when I started it was light outside, and now it's nighttime, and where are my children? Did I feed them? We get wrapped up into these things. Or sometimes it's some new thing, some new product that we want. We become obsessed with the next iPhone that's coming out. Some of you know what I'm talking about. You get on the blogs, you research because you want to find out what features are going to be on this new iPhone release, and all of a sudden you can't wait for it. Or it's the latest movie that's so great that you've been waiting for, and so you stand in line for the midnight showing. Anybody? Midnight showing? Ever done that? I see some hands, all right? Because we get our minds set on this, and this is going to be this great thing, or maybe it's the new car that we've been dreaming of. It's the convertible, it's the dream car, and suddenly something has happened, and there's an opportunity for you maybe to get your hands on one, and so that consumes your thoughts. Or maybe it's just a goal that you want to accomplish, and you throw yourself so much into it that all kinds of other things in life start to slip or fade away because this is something you have to achieve, you have to accomplish, has to get done. You have to be able to put that notch in your belt. And before you know it, all these other things have sort of faded into the background. Do you remember, if you can picture one of those moments in your life that you have had, then you probably also remember the moment that you had the wake-up call, when you sort of came to from that momentary obsession and realized, oh my, I look at the stuff that hasn't gotten done, or I've missed out on these other things, or I've sacrificed certain things that I didn't really mean to sacrifice, but I got so focused and lasered in and obsessed with this thing that I missed out. I was so stuck on my game that I missed a vacation. Memories with my kids. I don't think I missed everything, but obviously I missed some things because I had this obsession with this game. It's a little thing. But all of this stuff reveals, I think, that our heart is easily drawn to things. We have a tendency, it's part of our sinful nature, a tendency to be drawn and sucked into things, to be led astray by these desires of our heart that don't always lead us to the place we really want to go. They don't always have the result that when we're thinking about it, we actually want, but our heart takes us into these places or gets obsessed with these things, and we start to miss out on the things that are most important. It's not just us and the little things in life, but human history is littered with examples of people who were drawn by some appetite of their heart, and it had horrible consequences. Dictators like Hitler, Stalin, Mugabe, Kim Jong-il, Pol Pot, Assad, Hussein, Idi Amin, and that's just a few, have killed millions of people, ravaged their country's resources, kept people in bondage because their heart hungered for control and power and wealth, and left a wake of destruction and pain in their path. How many murders, crimes have been committed by people whose hearts craved attention or revenge or something that drew them far off the path that they probably would consciously have chosen. It's pretty hard when you think about all of that to make an argument, like some people do today, that the human heart can be trusted, that we should follow our heart, and that's how we'll get there. I don't think so. Think about in your own life. Here's a question for us today. Do you trust your heart more than the one who made it? Think about that for a second. Do you trust the desires in your heart more than you trust the God who created your heart? Here's what I want to talk about today as we get into the book of Proverbs, into this next part of our series. It's this: wise choices. That's our end goal. How do we achieve that wisdom? Wise choices aren't made by following your heart, but by trusting the one who made it. They aren't made by following your heart. We love that phrase, follow your heart, follow your dreams. Actually, that is not the path to wisdom. It is by trusting the one who made our heart. And we're going to talk today about a series of things that tend to draw our heart away. 5 appetites of the heart in particular that do not take us to a place that we want to be, but so often pull us and tug at our attention and often do lead us away from the path of wisdom. And I want to stop and I want to pray right here, because I think whenever we talk about our own hearts, it's easy to be blind to the reality that is there, because we're very good at convincing ourselves that things are not the way they actually are, or justifying what we are feeling. And I think for us to receive the word today, we have to have that spirit of humility to say, Lord, I need to know. If something is off in me, I need you to show me. I want to see it. So let's pray and ask God for that right now. Lord, as we hear your word this morning, we just want to say up front that we know our hearts are often easily led astray and distracted by things in this world, by desires and appetites that we have that do not ultimately satisfy. And we want to be able to see those in ourselves this morning. Would you show us, as we hear your word, where it is there might be something we are desiring or craving that we have been blind to, or simply rebelling against. We know it's off, but we have been digging in our heels saying, this is going to be my way. Lord, by your Spirit, would you speak to our hearts this morning? We will approach your word, receive it with humility and with a desire to obey. We trust you for that. Amen. Amen. Turn with me to Proverbs 3. We started last week with the first chapter, the very first 7 verses. Today we're going to look at chapter 3, the very beginning, the first 10 verses of chapter 3. Proverbs is kind of divided into 2 major sections. We talked last week about how the book is mostly, the last 2/3 are a collection of proverbs, these sayings that communicate a principle of wise living. That's the second 2/3, or the second and third. How does that work? The last part of the book, okay? The first third, the first 9 chapters, are a little bit different from the rest of the book, and that's the section that we're going to be in today. These first 9 chapters are really a call to the reader to consider wisdom, to consider the way of wisdom, to seek for it, and how to find it. So this is before we get to the section where it's kind of the big list and collection of the proverbs and sayings. We're going to look at this first third that is a call to wisdom. And before we read it together, I want to just review quickly the 3 key concepts that we talked about last week. The first one I just said, what is a proverb? It's that statement. It's usually a kind of densely worded statement, often with figurative language to help capture our attention and communicate a principle for wise living. Not a promise, we talked about that distinction last week, but a principle. Something that typically holds true, that is the way the world usually works. It is something that, a system almost, that God has wired in to his creation. The second thing that we talked about is the concept of wisdom. We use the word chokmah, the Hebrew word chokmah, which actually gets at this idea of someone who is skillful, who is skilled and able at something. So it's not just head knowledge. Wisdom is not just knowing more or gaining information, but it is a skill, an ability to follow the right way, to do what we know to do. We said last week that wisdom, ultimately, as we pursue it, is a person. Wisdom is a person. Jesus. So in our pursuit for wisdom, it's not about gaining information, it's about building a relationship with him. That is the way that he delivers wisdom to our life. Wisdom is a person, Jesus Christ, God's wisdom for us. And the third concept that we talked about last week is this idea of fear of the Lord. Fear, in this sense, gets at this idea of great awe and reverence. When we are overcome by something so amazing, so incredible, so much bigger than we are, that we see ourselves appropriately in proportion. We realize that we are small, that our sight is limited, that we don't know, that our way is probably not best, because there is one who sees farther and is much greater and much wiser than we are. These three ideas are important to understanding the book of Proverbs. And then we came to the key verse, which is going to be kind of our theme verse for the whole series. We're going to recite it each week. Think of it as our memory verse for this series. Proverbs 1:7. Let's read this together. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. One more time. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. So let's go now to Proverbs 3 today, and we're going to read the first 10 verses. You can follow along on the screen as well. It says, "My son, do not forget my teaching." My son. Right there, we talked about how this wisdom comes to us through relationship. Right there, the first two words, "my son," reinforces this idea of relationship as so important to gaining wisdom. These first 9 chapters are written as a parent writing to a child. A parent, a loving parent, saying to their child, "I want you to find the right way. I want to steer you in the way that will lead to life. I love you. I care about you. I know how distracting life can be. I know that there are things your heart will want and desire as you grow up, but look, this is the right way." Think of it that way, as a parent speaking to their child lovingly to guide them, to set them on the right path for life. It comes to us through relationship. "My son, do not forget my teaching, but keep my commands in your heart. For they will prolong your life many years and bring you peace and prosperity. Let love and faithfulness never leave you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Then you will win favor and a good name in the sight of God and man. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil. This will bring health to your body and nourishment to your bones. Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine. So in addition to the way it starts with the phrase, "my son," helping us to understand the relational nature of the way we gain wisdom through a relationship with Jesus Christ, you'll also see a pattern to these verses. They are divided into 5 pairs. You may have picked up on that. I divided them on the screen so you could see them in pairs. And each of these follows a parallel pattern. The first statement in each pair is a command, an instruction for us in a way that we should live. Each pair begins, I'll read it again, "Do not forget my teaching. Let love and faithfulness never leave you. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Honor the Lord with your wealth." And the second part of each of these pairs communicates to us what will be the result if we follow that command. Again, it says, "For they will prolong your life. Then you will win favor and a good name. He will make your paths straight. Nourishment will come to your bones. Your barns will be filled to overflowing." We see this pattern here in each of these 5 sets of statements. And additionally, as we think about the appetites of our heart, each one of these pairs gets at something that lures our heart away the loves that we find ourselves chasing after. And we're going to talk about each one of those 5 today. And we're going to go through these pairs and unpack them a little bit. The first pair, verses 1 and 2, gets at the appetite that we have for the love of independence. The love to be independent. We love our independence. We do. We don't like it when people tell us what to do. We want to forge our own way. We want to make our own decisions. We don't often like to ask for help from other people. No one can tell us how to live our life. Independence, standing alone, is something that our heart craves, especially in the culture that we live in, where we value independence so much. And the culture feeds this all the time. We have in our mind what is best for us. We think we know which way we should go. And to state that and live that way is being true to ourselves or speaking our truth. That's ludicrous. Our human heart can't arrive on its own at anything close to truth without acknowledging God. And that's what these first 2 verses get at. The wise love rightly. They recognize that they have a natural love to be independent, to do their own thing, to pull away. And they submit to that. My son, keep my commands in your heart. It says, obey my commands. I know you always want to do your own thing. Obey my commands because I know what is best for you. Obedience is the key idea here. Jesus talked a ton about obedience. In John 14, which records some of the last words he shared with his disciples before he went to the cross, he's trying to set them up for life after he is gone. And he says in just a few short verses, several times, or communicates the importance of obedience. John 14:15, if you love me, keep my commands. 6 verses later, whoever has my commands and keeps them is the one who loves me. 2 verses after that, anyone who loves me will obey my teaching. The next verse, anyone who does not love me will not obey my teaching. If we want to love rightly, we must obey. We must obey and recognize that our heart is drawn to independence, to doing our own thing, but God's way is always best. Our 3-year-old Jesse learned very quickly, for which we are grateful, how to say the words, I'm sorry. In fact, he could say it all the time for any reason, and almost to the point where it didn't mean anything anymore. Just any little thing. You know, he's coming around the corner and bumps into the wall. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. We're grateful for that. But we've started to have to teach Jesse, you can't just say it all the time and it mean anything. You can't smack your brother, say I'm sorry, and then turn around and smack him 10 seconds later. So we've been talking over and over and over. I said, just yesterday, I said, Jesse, I'm glad you said the words I'm sorry. Thank you. That's good. It's important to say the words, but you have to show me that you're sorry by changing what you're doing. I think in this particular case it was, hitting his brother or something. Like, you have to control your hands. You can say the words, but you have to actually do something different. If you're really going to mean that you're sorry, good words, now fix the actions. It's what Jesus is saying to us about obedience. We can say, I love Jesus all day long, but if we don't obey him, if we don't do what he tells us to do, we don't really love him at all. We love our independence. We love doing our own thing, doing it our way. The wise person recognizes that tendency and obeys God's way because they realize that it's best. Wise choices aren't made by following our heart, but by trusting the one who made our heart. Is there an area in your life where you have an appetite for independence? Beware. It can easily lead to disobedience. The second pair that we see in here, verses 3 and 4, gets at the love of admiration. The love of admiration. I think this one is really applicable and dangerous today. We love to be admired. We crave the praise of other people. We want people to know, to think we're successful. We want them to think we're fashionable, wealthy. We want them to think we're attractive, that we're capable, that we're accomplished, that we have it all together, that we're living the American dream. We long for that admiration from the people around us. Every one of us knows what it feels like to want someone to compliment them or praise them or recognize something that we have done. The human heart has a massive appetite for the admiration of others. We crave that. Our sinful nature craves the admiration of fellow man. But the wise love rightly. Verses 3 and 4, let love and faithfulness never leave you. Bind them around your neck, write them on the tablet of your heart. Then, I love what it says, you will win favor and a good name. That's what we want. We want a good name with other people. We want them to admire us. You will win a good name in the sight of God and man. If we follow our own appetite for admiration, we may get a little bit of it. But if we let love and faithfulness never leave us, we will win the favor and a good name in the sight of God and man, the one who matters most. The words love and faithfulness here are sometimes translated as truth, mercy, and kindness. Truth, mercy, and kindness. These are the kinds of things, the tools that work directly against our love of admiration. When we think of others first, when we act on someone else's behalf. We talked about agape in the last series, acting to someone else's benefit without expecting anything else in return. That is the opposite of our heart's craving to be admired, to be recognized, to be praised. Our heart craves that kind of stuff, and I am not innocent of that. A few months ago, I became aware, this is a perfect example of the way our hearts can lead us astray. I became aware of how much, this stuff is so insidious, how often I got on social media just to see if people might be commenting about a sermon that I preached, about something that I thought we were doing at church that was great, that I wanted people to be excited about. And I was like, one day I became aware, this is what I'm doing. How desperate is my heart for people to praise me, for people to think I'm capable, for people to think I am able. And I said, I am done. I am off of this thing. I do not want this. I do not need this. It's not leading to any place healthy. It didn't make me feel any happier or better or more accomplished. It just made me feel more obsessed and more disappointed when I didn't find what I wanted to find. And so I said, I'm done. I'm off Facebook, and I stayed off for about 4 months. And even when I got back on, I realized, I'm just going to be so cautious. The moment I find myself leaving this building after I preach to see if someone, I'm just being transparent. It's ugly. It is ugly. I said, I'm done. I'm not going to do it. We crave the admiration of other people, and it does not lead to any good place. Think about it. Is there some place in your life where that appetite, that desire for recognition or admiration has kept you from showing love, kindness, mercy to the people around you? Get your attention off yourself and on to the people in your life. The third love is the love of control. The love of control. We humans love to control our lives. We love to be in charge. We love to govern our world, to make our own decisions. We don't like it when things are unknown or uncertain. We don't really like to live by faith, even though we know we're supposed to. We hate waiting. We want things to happen the way we want them to happen, and often we try to exert that control over the people around us as well. We want them to do what we want them to do, when we want them to do it, how we want them to do it. And we even like to joke about it. I know, I have control issues, is a common phrase I hear, like this. What do you mean I have control issues? As she controls the child's toy from above. See, we can laugh at this, but it's amazing how easily our heart leads us astray. And when we come awake to it and we realize the decisions I'm making, the way I'm talking to my family, the way I'm interacting with my coworkers, I am trying desperately to control every situation in my life, that I could determine the outcome because I think I know best. It's dangerous. It is dangerous. And this verse is telling us here in 7 and 8, do not be wise in your own eyes, fear the Lord. There's that concept again. Fear the Lord. If you struggle with a desire for control and it's hard for you to trust God with things, start with the fear of the Lord. Start with a moment where you say, you, Lord, are greater than anything I can imagine. Your wisdom and your sight go farther than I can even think of. You are great, mighty, powerful, holy, and I am not. I am not. If there's someone is going to be in control, it sure better be you, because you see much farther than I do. It starts with the fear of the Lord. Our heart loves control. The next one is the love of significance. The love of significance. Look at this in verses 7 and 8. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil. This will bring health to your body and nourishment to your bones. We love to know that our life has meaning and purpose and value. And that in and of itself isn't a bad thing. That desire is God-given. We do have significance. The problem is when we choose to find it, our heart leads us astray and we look for it in all the wrong places. That's the warning here. Do not be wise in your own eyes. We need that proper awe and reverence. Our hearts long to be significant. But significance, though it makes us feel valuable, we only are significant because we are loved by God. That's why we're significant. He makes us significant, and he proved it by sacrificing his son. It's God, it's Jesus and his sacrifice that gives us value and purpose and meaning. We do not have it in and of ourselves or without him. He gives it to us. Wise choices aren't made by following our heart, but by trusting in the one who made it. And the last appetite, the fifth one that we see here, is the love of money. The love of money. Proverbs is full, like it or not, Proverbs is full of warnings, admonitions, wisdom about money and wealth and how we use it. In fact, we have a whole week in the series that's just about that, so I'll make my comments today fairly brief, but I will say this. So often, it's easy for us to brush this off. I don't love money. I don't find myself desiring or dreaming of being wealthy and just having cash, fanning myself with my $100 bills. I'm not like that. That's not me. I'm pretty down to earth about it. I would say this. Our love of money usually masquerades as a love of comfort. We do love our comfort. And the money that we crave is a tool to make our lives more comfortable, to live a life of greater ease. And the verse 9 is telling us, honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. What if the first question we asked every time we got our paycheck was, what will honor God most with this? What can I do with this that will honor God most? Instead of, how can I use this to have the things that I want, to live the life that I desire? But God, how can I honor you first with this? That is the way to combat the love of money that our hearts often have and crave. Here's the thing. Feeding these appetites or loves of our heart leads to a constant cycle of unmet satisfaction. Always consuming, always needing, always desiring, always unsatisfied. We never have enough independence. We never have enough control. We never have enough money. We are never admired enough to our satisfaction. It is an endless and discouraging cycle when we feed the loves of our heart. I think of someone like Steve Jobs, former CEO, founder of Apple, massively successful by any worldly standard. I mean, think about the 5 loves that we have just talked about. Independence, absolutely. He did what he wanted when he did it, and he was very successful at it. The love of admiration, who is more widely admired for what he has done and accomplished in the world, the empire that he built, the way he has impacted every one of our lives, whether you carry an Apple device or not, he has impacted your life, widely admired in his industry. Top of the list, easily. A love of control. He was infamous for his control. Every detail of the process, he wanted to control it. He wanted his mark on it. It had to be his way. It worked. If your goal was to build a technology empire, the love of money, more money than he knew what to do with. He had all of these things that our hearts, and I'm sure his heart, craved so much. I read his biography recently. Great read, fascinating book about this man. And there's a couple of quotes in here that caught me. It says, these are his words, when he was near the end of his life, diagnosed with cancer. He knew that the end was coming. He said, remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life. Because almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important. Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason, listen to this, he says, there's no reason not to follow your heart. There's a lot of wisdom in the statement, but following his heart did not ever lead him, despite all of his massive success, it never led him to what his heart most deeply craved. Because the other quote from the book, he was into a lot of Buddhist practices, and it said this: unfortunately, his Zen training never quite produced in him a Zen-like calm or inner serenity, and that too is part of his legacy. How sad. How sad. Truly, when I read that, I thought, he had everything one could want. Every appetite of his life had been fed. And the fact that he never found the inner peace he was looking for is also now a part of his legacy. A man that was never truly satisfied. Wise choices aren't made by following your heart. Disney may tell you so, Steve Jobs may tell you so, but it's not true. Trusting the one who made your heart is how we will find what we really are seeking in life. There's one more story I want to tell you. It's a legend. It goes like this. One lucky fellow was granted a tour of heaven and noticed a long table with guests seated at it, each of whom had this is curious, but follow along here, had a 3-foot fork strapped to his wrist. So picture that. Fork strapped to his wrist. The table was laden with a delectable banquet. Beautiful, excellent, delicious food. Not surprisingly, by the look of the table, all of the guests ate well and looked satisfied. On his return to earth, this same fellow was granted a pass through hell, in which he observed a banquet hall arranged with the exact same setting, same food, only here the guests were weeping, and had emaciated bodies as a full menu of food, everything they could want, sat before them. Perplexed naturally by this, the visitor asked his guide to explain the difference. What's going on? This was the answer. The long forks strapped to their wrists made it impossible for our guests in hell to feed themselves. They couldn't get it into their mouth. Yet they try nonetheless. And in frustration and dissatisfaction, they weep. But in heaven, each guest has learned to feed his friend across the table. And everyone is fully satisfied. Our hearts crave so many things that will not lead us to the satisfaction that we so desire. And so our question for us is this: when it comes to loving rightly, when it comes to the ways that you navigate the appetites of your heart, are you the simple, the fool, or the wise? We talked about these three characters last week: the simple, the fool, or the wise. The simple person is led completely by his or her appetites, almost a slave to those desires. Their decisions are driven by their gut reaction, the emotion of the moment. Whatever sounds good, that's what I'm going for. And so those desires, those cravings of the heart run everything, and they are blind to it. They're unaware that they're being driven in this way. They don't recognize, they don't see their own appetites. The fool finds ways to use people and situations to feed those appetites. They're actually very smart people, often very successful by the world's standards, absolutely aware of their appetites, able to justify them and do whatever it takes to feed them. Think about a successful money investor. Not that it's bad to invest money, but they're very good, even disciplined. They have to be disciplined to make what seem like wise choices about where to put their money and reap the reward from it. And if they do it well, they make lots of money. But if it's all to feed their own selfish appetites, they are fools. They are fools because they will always be unsatisfied. The wise person, listen to this, understands that his or her appetites will lead them astray. They recognize, I must be on guard against the desires of my heart, and they turn to God for satisfaction. Let me put it to you this way. The simple can't see. Fools can see, but use their sight for selfish gain. The wise are captivated by the one who can see it all. Are you the simple, the fool, or the wise? Or are there areas of your life where you are behaving like the simple, the fool, or the wise? Take out your next steps cards, would you, in your bulletin or in the seat back in front of you. I'd like everyone to do this. When we hear God's word, it's so important that we respond and reflect on it. I just have two questions I want us to think about today. The first one is this: what love or appetite of your heart has been in the driver's seat far too long? And you see it. You recognize it. This has been driving decision-making in this area of my life, and it's caused me to pursue certain things or neglect other things. This has been in the driver's seat far too long. We talked last week about how so many of our choices and decisions are driven by what's deep within us, and we're not even always aware of it, kind of down in the core of who we are. So here are a few questions as you think and reflect and write that you can ask yourself that might help reveal what is sometimes hidden to us. What do you worry about? What keeps you up at night? Is that because there's something that you love that is keeping you unsatisfied? What do you spend money on? What do you give other things up for? I gave up memories on my family vacation for a stupid game. It's the littlest thing, but it reveals how blind we can be to these things. What do you think about in your free time? When you have a minute to let your mind wander, what consumes it? Is there some love there that is unhealthy? What do you find yourself making excuses for? Justifying, well, it's because of this and this and this, and that's why I had to do that. If you find yourself making excuses, it's good to stop and reflect. What is driving this? What is it that I'm desiring or seeking that is keeping me unsatisfied? What do you complain about? What is the thing that always comes up, that you're always frustrated with and complaining about? And what is it that you desire or crave that makes you so dissatisfied with this? Write it down. What is that love or appetite that has been in the driver's seat far too long? And the second question is this, it's simple. What do you need to do about it? Specifically, what step do you need to take this week? Put it in practical terms. It's easy to leave and say, oh yeah, I need to change that. What are you going to do this week to help correct what is off? Is there some way that you need to trust God? Is there some way you need to live this week that shows, that puts wheels to your words saying that you trust God? Sometimes we say it, but we live hedging our bets with all of our plan Bs. There's something you need to do to say, because I trust God, I'm not just going to say it, but this is how I'm going to live this week to show that I trust Him. Do you need to let go of control? Maybe there's some area of this week where you need to intentionally say, I'm going to let this person or this situation, I'm going to take my hands off. I am not going to try to control it. I'm not going to try to have my way. I'm not going to try to make it turn out the way I think it needs to turn out. I need to let it go. Maybe it's a prioritization of your spending or your time or some area of your life where you really desire to be praised and recognized and admired, and you need to just give that to the Lord and say, I have all the value that I need from what you did for me on the cross. The love that you showed for me in that moment far exceeds any praise of man. Anything that anyone could ever say to me could never feed my heart the way your love demonstrated on the cross can. Let's pray. Lord, thank you for your wisdom. Thank you that we can trust you no matter what. No matter what. Lord, we recognize that our heart is drawn away so often by things. Open our eyes to it, we pray. Open our eyes to it this week if there are spots and places and decisions that we're making where our desires, the appetites of our heart are in the driver's seat, Lord. Would you wake us up by the power of your Spirit, convict us so that we could see it. We could no longer be simple, just blindly following these desires, but we could become aware. Stand before you and say, you are the God who sees it all. I fear you, Lord. I stand in awe and reverence of all that you are. I trust your way. I will obey your command. I will honor you with my wealth. I will follow your path because it is wisdom as you have given to us through Jesus Christ.
We just want to thank you for watching the sermon online. If God is working in your heart, we would love to hear about it. You can go online, www.encountertrinity.com/nextstepscard. You can fill out information there. Let us know what God is doing in your heart. If you need help with anything, we would love to help. Counseling, we would love to do anything that we can to help you go to that next level spiritually. When you fill this out, it goes to one of our pastors. It is private, and we will take care of that information to the best of our ability. We love you, we care about you, and we want to see God do great things in your life. Have a great day.